What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my refined review and builds guide for the new weapon refines of Legendary Edelgard, Lif, Duo Alm, Eyvel, Cormag, Valbar and Ewan. So in this video I'll be going over the best builds that you can run with these refines and also my opinion of them. So let's start with Legendary Edelgard, definitely one of the refines which a lot of people were looking forward to, and it definitely gives her the things which she was needing. So this weapon does have +3 attack and gives her the follow-up negation, and now she can debuff the opponent for -11 attack and defense in the combat. And she also gets special charges per attack, both on the enemy's hits and her own attacks. And finally, with this weapon refine, she's able to get true damage based on 15% of her attack and also get 30% damage reduction on foe's first attack. So that is the part of her weapon refine, and the full picture is definitely given by the remix as well, which is to her Raging Storm. So Raging Storm 2 does give you the extra action if she's solo. So this is the only condition which is strictly solo that is still there. Everything else in her weapon, as you've seen, does have an alternate condition, and no longer she needs to be completely solo for that, except for the extra action that you get out of Raging Storm 2. And it also debuffs the opponent for -5 attack and defense, and also gives you the guaranteed follow-up attack. And it does give you the offensive half of null follow-up against the dragon and beast units. So overall, this weapon refine and remix does try and make Legendary Edelgard as a much more functional Gale Force unit, because she no longer has to rely on the heavy blade checks, because meeting heavy blade checks gets tougher and tougher as we get more units and more effects like Grand Strategy, for example. So having these special charges in the weapon is really good, and now she actually has a guaranteed follow-up attack in her slot B skill, so that is really helpful because she's extremely slow, and one-shotting units is not going to be all that easy anymore, as we do have a lot of damage reduction and stuff like that. So it does help her, and the true damage definitely helps her do a lot more damage, as most of the time she's going to be running Gale Force and not an actual damaging special. And I cannot really state it enough how much the debuffs help her, because it's like -16 attack and defense debuff on the enemy, which is really quite a lot. So it can make her a lot bulkier with the 30% damage reduction that she gets, and also let her do a lot more damage. Now, having said that, this weapon definitely tries to make her better, but it still leaves things to be desired of, like having a slaying effect, having -1 special cooldown would have been really good, or having anything that can increase her mobility would have been really useful as well. So unfortunately, she is going to be stuck to using Assault Troop as the slot C skill if she wants to get the mobility. She's not really going to be having much better mobility with this weapon refine. And unfortunately, as a Gale Force armor, she faces insane competition from herself in the form of Summer Edelgard, because Summer Edelgard has got a brave weapon. A lot of times, if you use her, Legendary Edelgard, and if you face Hardy Fighter save armors that have near save, then you're just going to be able to stop her guaranteed follow-up attack. In the case of Summer Edelgard, she can still kill some save units with the brave hits that she can get. And when it comes to pure tanking, Brave Edelgard of course has insane weapon refine, which can also give her like a lot of bulk and a lot of debuffs, and she also has much better mobility. And we also have the OG version of Edelgard, which cannot be forgotten because she just got a weapon refine last month, and she's definitely not holding back any punches. She does have access to infantry skills, which Legendary Edelgard does not. So there's definitely quite a bit of competition among the Edelgards, but still Legendary Edelgard is going to be able to function a bit better. Overall, this is a decent weapon refine, not really insane, but ultimately she's not going to be excelling as like the best Gale Force unit like Summer Edelgard, or like a really solid near safe tank like Brave Edelgard. But still, she is going to be functioning in the middle, kind of, because of the bulk that she gets, and also because of the special charges that make it easy for her to pretty much get the Gale Force off. And I'm definitely excited to try her out whenever I can in Aether Raids offense, because I used to use her quite a lot. It's also important to talk about that Edelgard is a fire legendary unit, so her main usage is going to be in arena for extra scoring, but unfortunately, because of not having any kind of mobility in her weapon, it is going to be forcing her to run Assault Troop, which is not a 300 SP passive, so she cannot really reach her max scoring without compromising her mobility pretty much. So that can suck a bit if you're trying to get the max scoring. So unfortunately, this weapon refine doesn't really help you too much in that aspect, which a lot of people were looking forward to. But still, this weapon refine and remix are decent enough and definitely improves on her role. So if you want to use her on a budget, you can definitely use her with the new remix skill that she comes with, an Attack Res Ideal 4, which is definitely better than the Attack Res Solo that she comes with. So you can just use Armored Stride and use Gale Force. she was the first, the Gale Force armor, so she is going to be really appreciating that. And if you're going to be investing into her, then Assault Troop is easily the best Lottie skill that you can have on her. And I'm kind of surprised that they didn't give her this as a remix. So you will have to fodder off the Summer Edelgard for this. But if you want to use Legendary Edelgard a lot, then I think it's worth it because it improves her mobility a lot more than Armored Stride. But I guess if you don't really have Summer Edelgard, then you can stick with Armored Stride. And you can also run Attack Defense Ideal for a lot of the melee matchups and also get it at the same time with Assault Troop 3. So that is going to be the Gale Force build that you can run in Aether Raids offense and pretty much use Pivot with the extra actions that you can get. If you've seen my Aether Raids videos, then she's going to be functioning pretty much similarly to Summer Edelgard. And if anything, you know, Summer Edelgard just functions better than her in many cases. But she can also be used as a Fury Wounds of Mercy beacon, which was not possible before. So the special charges in her weapon definitely enable this, and this can pretty much help you be in the Wings of Mercy range in 3 combats. And a lot of times you can go in, like get 2 kills, use the Gale Force and get back using the pivot. Again, if you've seen my Aether Raids videos, you can get an idea of how to do this in many of the matches practically. So Double Fury is something that you can run on Legendary Edelgard now, which is really good. And you can also use her as a hidden sit unit. So basically you can go in against an Aether Raids defense team and just kill like 1 or 2 units and some really important units like maybe Brattle Katria for example, and just tank the other unit. Because keep in mind that she does get a lot of attack debuff on the enemy and also the damage reduction. So that can make her really bulky, especially at Pluston Merge, and especially when she's supported by someone like Legendary Eliwood or Young Eliwood for like Null Panic and you know, bonus doubler. That is going to be making her really bulky. So that's also something you can, you know, do. But against many of the top tier teams, she's unfortunately not going to be surviving against something like Deadeye Duochrome, Lethalities and stuff like that. So you have to watch out for that, and this cannot really be done against every single team. But still, it's going to be an option that you can run on her if you're a huge Edelgard fan. And then finally, if you're going to be using her in Arena as a legendary unit, then like I said, you will have to use Assault Troop 3, unfortunately, which does not really give you the max score. But I guess if you do have Guidance 4 on your team in form of a Flyer, then you can try and run a 300 SP passive like maybe Joint Drive Attack or Attack Defense Menace. But yeah, not everyone is going to be having a flying unit in their Arena core, much less a Flying Dancer. Using Legendary Edelgard in Arena does not really become any easier, even though her combat has become a lot better. Still, you're going to be using an armor unit at the end of the day, but at least you're going to be able to get the mobility with Assault Troop 3, which, like I said, should always be run because having a 1 movement armor in Arena is just asking for trouble. And technically, with the Weapon Refine and its lenient condition, she can actually function as a near save unit. So this is definitely something you can do and just blow off the enemies with the glimmers that you can retaliate back with because of these special charges that you can get. You could even run Ignis actually, so that is going to be an option as well with the special charges that you get. So Sturdy Stance is perfect to give her the guard, and she does get the guaranteed follow-up attack and the attack debuff from Raging Storm, so it's not all that bad. The only thing that strictly requires the solo condition is the extraction from Raging Storm 2. So she can actually function as a near save unit if you want to, and she can definitely be really bulky with all of the attack debuffs that she can get. Obviously, she's not going to be run as a near save unit a lot, but still, I wanted to go over that option as it is possible now because of the Weapon Refine. Mythic Lif gets a Weapon Refine and Remix as well along with Legendary Edelgard, and his Remix and Refine are definitely really stacked. So now with this weapon, he's able to get plus 10 to all of his stats in the combat, and also the guaranteed follow-up attack. Unfortunately, if he attacked, he's going to be dealing 20 damage to the nearest ally, so that friendly fire damage is still there in the Weapon Refine, but now it is up to like 4 spaces, so it's a lot more lenient with its condition. But yeah, you're still going to be damaging your allies, and if special is ready or triggers in the combat, he's able to get plus 5 true damage and also heal up 7 HP per hit. So that is really helpful for the self-sufficiency, and then he can have minus and special cooldown with the Weapon Refine, and also get a super quick impulse effect on turn 1, which can set up his Open the Future, which is absolutely amazing. So having this minus to special cooldown means that it's really easy to loop his Open the Future by using Special Spiral. And finally, he gets 30% damage reduction on foe's first attack. Now that is not all, that is just his Refine, and his Remix is definitely pretty stacked with Deadly Balance Plus, which does inflict -5 attack speed and defense debuff on the opponent, along with the guard effect. and you do get special charges per foe's attack, and you also disable the percentage based damage reduction skills when you trigger your special, and he does have special spiral built into this lobby skill. So he definitely has a lot of effects, as you can see, and Mythic Lif has become a much better unit in the combat because he's going to be having Open the Future, he's going to be healing up a lot of HP, and he's also going to be doing a lot of damage with that Open the Future, and also having the, damage reduction piercing, which is really helpful against Elamine in the Anima season. Now, speaking of Elamine, unfortunately he is susceptible to her because Elamine can just false start him on turn 1 and he will not get the super quick impulse effect out of his weapon refine, which can be a bit unfortunate. So overall, Lif has definitely seen a big glow up in terms of the combat. He's going to be a lot more tanky and he's going to be doing a lot more damage and also healing up crazy amounts of HP with the special and also with the weapon refine. But ultimately he is an Aether Raids defense unit, and when you try and actually assess his performance as a mythic unit, he's not really going to be standing out too much compared to the existing Anima mythics, unfortunately. So it doesn't really do too much for the game mode that he was made for. But outside of Aether Raids defense, he's definitely going to be really good in the other game modes, or if you use him for tanking in Aether Raids Chaos. So those are going to be the times when you can use him. But in Aether Raids defense, he's not really going to be standing out too much as a mythic unit, but at least now he packs a punch, and he can also be another target for Elamine. So if the Elamine tries to false start him, then they're probably not going to be false starting someone like Brattle Catria or like Duo Asker. We just have a lot of effects which have the at start of turn effect, so he's also going to be one of them. And at least now he can pierce through the damage reduction and just function as a much better melee nuke. The friendly fire damage which Lif does is also a bit, detrimental, and I wish he didn't have that. So I guess outside of Aether Raids defense, if you do want to use him, you could try and use him with units who actually want to fall in the range of many of their skills like Vantage, Desperation, or stuff like that, or just run him with Medius so that he can have the On Guard, because the friendly fire damage can definitely be pretty annoying. If you're going to be building up Lif on a budget, then he does come with even Tempest as his new remix skill, because he no longer needs Time Pulse to pre-charge his special, and the super quick impulse effect from his weapon refine can just do that, so he can just be run with this kind of budget build, and he's going to be performing nicely in like limited hero battles, in the other PvE game modes, and also in Arena Assault. But if you're trying to use him in Aether Raids defense, then you can definitely try and run Odd Tempest as the Sacred Seal so that he can have the permanent 3 movement. Now of course, he's going to be susceptible to Elamine, that is no secret, but at least you're going to be having like a 3 movement, and he can also function with Sturdy Impact and hit really hard with his Deadly Balance Plus, which can pierce through damage reduction. So that is definitely one way of using him, and this is definitely something I'm going to be running myself. So it is going to be an option, and if you invest even more into him, then you can run Attack Defense Ideal 4 and Canto Control 3. So having Canto Control on a mythic unit does make sense, as it can stop the Canto of Regan and the other Canto units like Yuri for example, which is going to be helpful if you're going to be using Lif a lot. And you can also have Attack Defense Ideal 4, which can give you attack and defense for the both phases, unlike Sturdy Impact. And you can even run Ignis on him actually, because if you run his original Time Pulse, you can actually pre-charge his Ignis. Or if you just run him with like Duo Asker, that is also another way of just pre-charging his Ignis. So Ignis is going to be hitting really hard. But if not, then you can just run Open the Future with this kind of build, and it can also work out. If you're going to be using Lif more for his tanking potential, then Distance Stance is going to be a pretty nice upgrade. And you can also give him Attack Smoke 4, because while he does have a lot of the effects with his Refine and Remix, he doesn't really have follow-up negation up there. So you can definitely try and get the follow-up negation from Attack Smoke 4, which is going to be helpful. And you can also give him the finish skill actually, because he pretty much has the finish skill in a way in his Weapon Refine, which does give him the healing and the true damage. So you can get even more true damage out of the finish skill and also even more healing. So that is definitely going to be the way of doing things. We don't really have attack defense finish right now, so defense rest finish is pretty much the skill that he can run, and also run attack smoke 4. And finally, if you do plus and merge him, and if you want to use him in arena, then he's going to be a really good arena unit, and he could be used with attack res oath 4 so that he can get extra resistance to tank stuff like Ninja Corins and also have better mobility. Cormag, in my opinion, out of this batch has got the best weapon refine. That is just my opinion, and the reason for that is the flat damage reduction that he gets. So Revenger Lance does give him -1 special cooldown and guaranteed follow-up attack, and he can get +8 to all of his stats in the combat, and he also has the half tempo effect, the offensive half, which is basically null guard, so he can reliably trigger his specials. And finally, he's got true damage reduction or flat damage reduction, which works on 15% of his defense. So we have seen this before on the Weapon Refine of Horror, and of course before on Asker, Brave Dimitri and stuff like that. So having this flat damage reduction is really good because it is not pierceable by Deadeye or Lethality, and it is like a consistent form of damage reduction, which is going to be really good for tanking. And if you've used any kind of flat damage reduction unit, then you know how much big of a deal this is, and that's why I think that Cormag is kind of the winner of this batch in my opinion. So Cormag can function extremely well as a flyer now and be really tanky. And even though his speed stat can be a bit awkward, at least this weapon does give him a guaranteed follow-up attack, so you can just focus on stacking up his defense instead of trying to stack up his speed like before. So this is going to be a really good thing for him. And the half tempo effect means that if you actually give him special charges status from Na or Fallen Ninian, then he can just retaliate back with like bonfires, which do a lot of damage. Overall, Cormag has got an excellent weapon refine that works really well with guard bearing 4 or any kind of damage reduction that he can provide him externally with Flame or Elamine, for example, and he's going to be really tanky because of the flat damage reduction that he can get. If you don't really have guard bearing to give to Cormag, then you can still run him with double attack defense catch 4 and attack defense Neotrace, and also attack defense range, so this way he can be bulky with the attack debuffs that he can get and function in both of the phases. But ultimately, guard bearing 4 is the skill for Cormag, like it is for so many other flyers who have flat damage reduction, like Chloe, Spring Maria for example. So guard bearing 4 is the ultimate slot B skill for him and the best option. So if you're a big Cormag fan, try and get this skill because it is absolutely going to be changing his combats and his performance because of the consistent damage reduction. And the damage reduction from guard bearing 4 is actually calculated before the flat damage reduction, and then whatever damage is left, it is then applied with the flat damage reduction. And that's why it's so good for tanking, because you're going to be ridiculously tanky with this build and also with his high defense, especially if you go with the Floret and ascend that. And attack defense hold is also a pretty nice slotsy skill that you can use just to get even more bulky and have those consistent debuffs. Guard bearing 4 also does give you the defense debuff, which does help you hit a bit harder, and he does get like +8 speed out of Revenger Lance, so guard bearing 4 also does make him a bit faster as well. You can also run Sturdy Stance 3 on him if you want to go the full enemy phase route, and of course the guard effect is really helpful for any kind of tank, and it is really helpful for not dying to specials, so it is an option that you can run. And attack smoke 4 is also the option you can get because it is going to be providing you with the follow-up negation, which is really good when you're going to be getting the guard bearing damage reduction and the guard effect. It is going to be making him insanely tanky at this kind of max investment. Of course, if you're going to be using him competitively, then I think that he can work in Summoner Duels S with guard bearing 4 and guidance 4. Guidance 4 is a crazy skill for Summoner Duels, and it does enable a lot of nonsense. So, you know, Cormag can just function as a frontliner and draw back his allies and provide them the guidance 4. And with guard bearing 4, he's going to be insanely bulky. Sturdy Stance is needed so that you don't really die to Luna of Brave Selifs and such, so it is a very important skill. And if you're going to be using him in Arena, then of course B-Dual Flying 4 is needed, and he's actually going to be a much better Arena unit now with his Weapon Refine along with, you know, said guard bearing 4, and also guidance 4 providing even more mobility options for your team. Finally, if you do want to build him up the old way and, you know, just speed stack him, then that could also be done because his speed is kind of alright, I suppose, at max investment. So I would only recommend this to do this on max investment, and speed defense clash can help you also get the debuff neutralization on those stats, so he can be bulky and also pretty fast. And if you can like outsource some kind of null follow up to him, that would be just perfect with this kind of speed investment. So I wanted to go over the max speed Cormag, even though it is not something a lot of people would run, but still many people who did build up Cormag before his Weapon Refine did, you know, speed stack him. So if you're one of those people, then you can also go the, you know, full route and give him the Clash 4 skill and also the Oath 4 skill to stack up even more speed. And you do get the speed debuff from guard bearing 4, which is also helpful. Duo Alm gets a Weapon Refine to a Scepter of Love, and this does give him +3 speed and also +8 to all of these stats in the combat. And then he can get even more attack and speed in the combat depending on 25% of foes' visible defense, and then he gets even more attack and defense in combat depending on 25% of foes' visible resistance. So against a lot of the bulky opponents, he's going to be getting like a lot of stats to his attack, and he's also going to be able to get really fast against high defense opponents, which are going to be a lot more common than the high resistance opponents. And then finally, with this weapon refine, he has got the dull all effect, which neutralizes any kind of visible buffs of the enemies, and the full tempo effect, which gives him the null guard and also lets him disable the special charging skills of the enemies. So overall, this weapon refine is pretty decent. I wouldn't really say that it's too insane. It really needed like maybe one extra effect like damage reduction, null follow-up or something like that, because the standard for these seasonal refines has been set really high by Duo Alphons, and I don't think this weapon refine kind of meets that. Still, overall, it is decent, and it is ultimately going to be like a stat ball weapon refine. Full tempo is good, but he doesn't really have minus on special cooldown, and dull all effect is, I suppose, useful if you want to use him in arena because he is a duo unit. So there are a lot of units are going to be using the rally skills, and almost completely going to be ignoring any of that. His duo button has still aged pretty decently well, where it can provide you the healing and cleanse the debuffs and also give the +6 attack and speed. So overall, he can function pretty well with this weapon refine, but nothing really that is earth-shattering in my opinion. Still a pretty nice upgrade if you're a big fan of him. If you want to run him on the budget, then I guess you have to remove his lull attack speed because it is redundant with the dull all that is present in his weapon refine. So you could provide him with null follow-up and just run attack speed form and just run speed smoke as he slots his skill. But if you're going to be investing a bit more into him with like divine codes, then you can run attack speed ideal 4 and close call 3. Lunar Flash can still be a pretty good special against many of the tanky opponents and does scale off base of his speed, so you could still run that. And he doesn't really benefit too much from like Vital Astra or Godlike Reflexes, which are the fast specials, despite Duo Alm actually getting really fast against many of the matchups because of the stat balling that is enabled by his weapon refine. Finally, if you're going to be investing heavily into him, then I think that Close Call 4 is really helpful because of the speed that he gets. He's going to be getting a lot of damage reduction, and that is really helpful for his bulk. And you can also get some healing out of attack speed finish 4, and that is of course going to be working out really well when you've got the full tempo effect. So it does allow you to pretty much use Darting Breath and retaliate back with Lunar Flashes, and Speed Smoke 4 is going to be giving you even more damage reduction. So at high investment and max investment, this is definitely something you can run. And you can actually run him with Na, who is easily one of the best support units to be run with Duo Alm, because she can provide you the special charges status, which lets you retaliate back with Lunar Flashes, and she can also run Infantry Null Follow-Up. So Duo Alm doesn't really have Null Follow-Up in their weapon refine, and running as the Sacred Seal does take away from the extra attack and speed that you could have gotten, so it does have an opportunity cost. So if you can provide that support externally, that is the best thing ever. And at max investment, you can run the new Distant Attack Speed solo, and even though they do have the weapon refine condition, which needs them to be within 2 spaces of an ally, it can still function, and you can still get like attack and speed in the player phase as well as the enemy phase, while getting the distant counter effect and also being really bulky because of the damage reduction. Of course, you're going to be susceptible to damage reduction piercing from Deadeye and lethality and all of that, so you have to watch out for that. Finally, if you do want to use him in arena, then he can score as a 190 BST unit because of his duo scoring and because of the 300 SP passives. So in arena, you can try and run defense res rally because you can buff up the attack and speed of your allies with the duo button and pretty much get a healing out of it. So it's pretty helpful in arena where you have no restriction of like using the duo skills. And you can also run Time Pulse 4 actually, so that Lunar Flash can become a 1 cooldown special and you can immediately retaliate back with it and many times kill the opponents on the retaliation. And you're definitely going to be facing some insanely fast units there. So that could be run, and Null Follow-Up could be run as a Sacred Seal if you cannot really outsource it. Eyvel finally gets a weapon refine in form of Free Blades Edge, and this does give her +8 to all of her stats, and she can also inflict guard on the foe and get 30% damage reduction in combat. So this is not the damage reduction only on the foe's first hit, like it is for many of the weapon refines in this batch, so that is pretty good. And then she can get true damage based on 15% of her defense, and finally she has got the guaranteed follow-up attack. So overall, this weapon refine is decent, and I'm pretty happy that it's not instantly dumpstered by Arcane Devourer, which just came out on Rearmed Fallen Crom. So at least this weapon refine does try and play into her strengths by using her defense, trying to give her the true damage because her attack is not the highest, giving her the guaranteed follow-up attack because she's not the fastest, and guard effect is definitely pretty nice for tanking, along with the damage reduction, which is actually present for more than just the first attack. So Eyvel can function as a tanky sword unit. Unfortunately, there's just insane competition when it comes to the sword infantry units, so she can be tanky, especially for the melee matchups with everything that she has got, and it definitely frees her up from running many of the other skills like tier 4 stand skills, for example, and from running Crooked Post. So I think that's pretty good, but I wish the damage reduction that she got was actually flat damage reduction like Cormag, because she does have good enough defense for that, and that would have just made her even better. But as it stands right now, this is a decent refine, not exactly too insane or excellent, but still serviceable. And if you're going to be building her up on a budget, then you can provide her dull clothes from female Shez, and this is basically going to be our bootleg lull skill. So it could be done on a budget, and you can also provide her attack smoke and run steady breath with Ignis so that she can do a lot of damage with it. But if you're going to be investing a bit more into her, then the ideal build for her is going to be with attack defense bulwark in the slot B, and attack defense unity which can protect you from the debuffs to your two of the most important stats. And you can also run attack smoke 4 to get the follow-up negation, because she doesn't really have that in her weapon, and that's a good effect to have for a tanky unit. And then you can just use steady breath and Ignis to do a lot of damage. So this is pretty much going to be the build for her, and there are not too many options for many of these lower sword units. So this is pretty much what you can run. But in the future, she is going to be having more options when attack defense finish 4 comes out. So because she already gets the true damage based on her defense, you can try and double down on that by running Special Spiral 4, Time Pulse 4, and basically loop bonfires and get even more true damage, and also get the healing with attack defense finish 4 whenever it comes out. So that is going to be the build for the future, but I kind of wanted to future-proof my video, and that is something that she's going to be able to do as well. Now, I know I will get a lot of comments if I don't mention this, but yes, you can definitely run her at max investment with a more speedy build, where she's going to be stacking up damage reduction with Close Call 4. Now, she's not the fastest unit out there, but still she can try and make this work at max investment, and Close Call 4 is definitely going to be helping her be a lot more bulky. Vital Astra is mainly there for the damage, and if you can pre-charge it, then it is going to be even more damage reduction. Her Weapon Refine does provide her with +8 speed, and obviously this speed is not going to be enough to compete with the modern sword infantry units, but still it is something that you can do, and especially with a lot of support. Valbar is a free-to-play lance armor with Valbar's lance as the Weapon Refine, which does give him +10 defense and attack in the combat, and he also gets 60% damage reduction versus foes' follow-up attacks in the enemy phase. And with the Weapon Refine, he's able to get the special cooldown charge +1 per attack, and this is going to be both on his own attacks and the enemy's attacks. And finally, he's able to heal up 7 HP after the combat. So this is a decent Weapon Refine, and it definitely helps him function as a near safe tank, but he lacks the guard effect, the auto follow-up, or even the extra resistance, which can be troublesome many times because you are going to be facing dragons. There is Medius in the light season, there is Ceros in the Astra and Animus season, which you might have to near save against at some point, not to mention the units that can get adaptive damage, which can also do a number on him. And I really wish that he got some kind of dual phase brave weapon like Arden. That would have been so awesome. And the competition for a lance armor is just so steep, because we have got Brave Hector, we have got Forsyth, who recently got a Weapon Refine and who can heal up like crazy. We also have Gilliam, who can get so much debuff against the enemy. We also have Shell, who also got a solid Weapon Refine. So it's really tough for Valbar to stand out when it comes to near safe tanking. And he's definitely going to be needing some skills to give him the auto follow-up and the guard effect, which he's lacking. So he's not exactly the kind of unit that you'll go out of your way to build up, and this is going to be good for the Valbar fans, which have been waiting for a Weapon Refine. And if that's the case, then you can just try and run the near safe build with Sturdy Stance 3 and Slick Fighter 3. Unfortunately, the best slot B skill for Valbar doesn't really exist yet, because we have Vengeful Fighter 4, which just overlaps horribly with his Weapon Refine, because he actually wants to have the enemy to double. And then we have Special Fighter, which kind of overlaps a lot with the special charges. He doesn't get any kind of auto follow-up attack out of it. So we're going to be waiting for the Slick Fighter 4 or Crafty Fighter 4 in the future, which could maybe help Valbar function a bit better. But until then, you can just run Sturdy Stance 3 to get the guard effect, and Slick Fighter from the Ephemera Manual of Degencia. And you can just run Ignis with the attack defense form, and you don't really have to run any kind of Steady Breath Sacred Seal, because he does have these special charges in his weapon, and he can definitely do a lot of damage with that Ignis. You can also run him with Crafty Fighter actually if you want to get the guard effect out of it. And you can also run Attack Defense Bond 4 from the Dancer Quan Ephemera manual that we had. So it can provide him the debuff neutralization to his attack and defense, which are really important. And finally, if you do want to have a tier 4 slot B skill, then Quick Riposte 4 can provide you the damage reduction on the first attack, and then he has got the damage reduction on the second attack or the follow-up attacks with his Weapon Refine. So something like that could work out, and it also provides him with the auto follow-up. And until we get like Crafty Fighter 4 or Slick Fighter 4, it is looking like a decent enough option on him. That's why I wanted to mention it. And finally, you can definitely run Hardy Fighter with Escutcheon and pretty much get crazy amounts of damage reduction on the first hit and then on the second hit with his Weapon Refine. Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to get auto follow-up, so you'll have to run Quick Riposte Sacred Seal, which I don't really like. But because Valbar does heal up the HP, it's a bit easier for him to run Quick Riposte Sacred Seal because of the healing, and it's a bit easier for him to, stay in the range of the skill. Ewan gets a Weapon Refine, which can give him +8 to all of his stats in the combat, and he does get 30% damage reduction on foe's first attack. He also has attack and resistance debuff neutralization, and then finally he can provide the attack and resistance debuff on the enemy in the combat depending on 20% of his visible resistance, and he does get guaranteed follow-up attack as well. So this Weapon Refine, like a lot of the refines in this batch, is just decent. It doesn't really do too much and it's not really insane, but still at the very least he's going to be able to function a bit more uniquely, because with the attack and resistance penalty based on his visible resistance, if you stack it up with a lot of the other debuffing skill, you can definitely debuff the opponent's attack and resistance by quite a lot, and you can pretty much get like -10 attack and resistance debuff out of this weapon alone. And the debuff neutralization does mean that attack res unity is not something you have to run in his slot A, because that would be redundant. So it does open up some other options that he can run, and the guaranteed follow-up attack definitely helps him because he's not the fastest, but ultimately a red mage nuke like Brave Lysithea or Kadean Nino are just going to be better in the long term, but at least Ewan can now function a lot better. So if you want to build him up on a budget, then you can simply give him Fury, because keep in mind that the penalties that he gets on the enemy is based on his visible resistance. So boosting up the visible resistance is helpful, and you can also stack up even more attack and resistance debuff with lull attack resistance from the Divine Codes and also attack resistance menace, which we did recently get from the Fallen Male Morgan Ephemera manual. But if you're going to be investing a bit more into him, then like a lot of the mages, you have to run Special Spiral 4 so that you can pierce through the damage reduction. And because you're going to be triggering your special a lot, you can run Attack Resistance Finish 4, which is going to be giving you the healing and the extra true damage. And Attack Res Oath 4 does work out, again because it does give him the visible resistance, which does help you get extra penalties on the opponent. You can also run Remote Sparrow actually and bump up his damage reduction to 51%, which can definitely help him initiate against many of the threats a lot easily. And you can still run Special Spiral 4 with Glimmer and constantly loop it. But in my opinion, the best slot A skill for him is going to be Still Water. The debuffs that he gets on the enemies is based on his visible resistance, and he does have the debuff neutralization to his attack and resistance. One of the main problems of running something like Still Water is that you're going to be a magnet for like resistance debuff, chill resistance, chill attack, stuff like that. But Ewan doesn't really care about that with his Weapon Refine. So you can easily run Still Water without too much of consequences and boost up the penalties that you get. And you can run Special Spiral and Time Pulse 4 and loop Iceberg and do a lot of damage with it. So at max investment, we definitely want to ascend his resistance asset so that you can get the most out of his weapon and also get even more damage. And then finally, if you are going to be giving him the max investment build, then Sabotage Attack Resistance is going to be the option. So it is going to be giving him crazy amounts of attack and resistance debuff on the enemy along with his weapon. So it is going to be an option that you can certainly run. And because we have the visible resistance check, Oath 4, Still Water, and Fury does work out pretty well. Make sure to share this video with your friends if they're trying to build up any of these units with the new weapon refines. And if you did enjoy this video, then make sure to leave a like and a comment, helps me tremendously. And if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by becoming a YouTube member down below or by using Super Thanks. And for more FE videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as Sigrun after seeing the kind of weapon refine Cormag got. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.